goes on at Rutgers and engagement at Rutgers is important. So this is social work related issues, public health related issues, psychology and psychological problems associated with refugees are critical in how they the interplay between those, poverty, displacement, and the ability even to migrate is important. In addition to the challenges all refugees face, such as finding permanent shelter, food, work, and clothing, confronting language and cultural barriers, female refugees also confront other issues. The most critical one often is gender-based violence, which is an issue that I think will be addressed a couple of times today. So thanks again to the Institute for Women's Leadership for ensuring that women and minorities have a say in policy decision in this general field. Also for the Center on Violence Against Women and Children, founded by Judy Postmus here at Rutgers, who's worked extensively on the issues of physical, sexual, and other kinds of violence that take place against women and children. There was an event here, I guess on April 6th, Displays Lives event on gender-based violence, and one of many events that take place at Rutgers. Some of the issues on refugees and migration also overlap with other UN SDGs, and for those of you interested in some of the sort of the nexus between the refugee and migration problem and other UN Sustainable Development Goal issues such as poverty, I encourage you to go look at our website on that and what's going on at Rutgers related to the Sustainable Development Goals. We have found in putting this together that actually others are quite interested. In particular, Rutgers is a member of the Big Ten. So the Big Ten is not only about football, but it's also about getting together all of the not all of the administrators, but many administrators from schools like Rutgers and Penn State and Iowa State and Michigan and University of Illinois, and comparing notes and sharing and working on projects together. And so when we were looking for new projects in the global office, I meet with the other global officers, I had suggested that we work on this, and they dropped 2 other projects, and so there's a big focus now amongst Big Ten schools that will work on refugees and migration-related problems globally. We also, when we put up this website, we received a call, or rather an email from the APLU. This is the public land-grant universities around the country, and they like the idea of doing this website, so they're going to try to repeat it sort of nationally and have a coordinated effort nationally on working on refugee and migration problems. So it's spreading this idea of working together. We're maybe 5 or 10 years behind the times to work on these problems, given the magnitude of the problem and the history of the problem, but better late than never. Okay, so let me finish and pass on to Horia. Horia is, as was mentioned, coming to us from Rutgers Newark. She's a leading member of something we call the University Alliance on Refugees and At-Risk Migrants, UARRM. This is a new coalition spearheaded actually by Kyle Farnbury and Colleen Tuez from the Open Society. Colleen was at the UN, she just moved to the Open Society in New York. And Kyle and Colleen, led by Jane Roshan and Hori Tafesh, are sort of coordinating activities inside the universities in the greater New York region, actually the whole New England region. We get together and try to coordinate activities. There'll be a conference this summer, we think July 23rd if it doesn't get changed, here in New Brunswick, where all of these schools will be getting together, sharing best practices, talking about working on programs together, different initiatives both to support refugees and refugee scholars here in the U.S. as well as some integration with activities abroad. So let me pass on now to Hori. Thank you, Hori.
Okay, good morning. I would like first to thank you all for being here today, and thank Douglas Civic Center for inviting me and for hosting this event. As you might see, I have no notes with me. I was just be sharing my, let's say, a glimpse of my personal experience as a refugee. To start with, first, being a refugee have never been my choice because I was born as a refugee. For my parents were also born as a refugee in Lebanon, So I was born as a Palestinian refugee in Lebanon. I was raised in a refugee camp for about like 15 years. I got my elementary and secondary education at the camp in the United Nations schools. After that, I was awarded a scholarship to study graphic design in Lebanon. So, what it means to be a refugee? For me, this question have been in my mind like for too long, since I was a child, because you don't know, like you just know that you are a refugee, but what it means, like you have no clue. But it was very desperate that everything you want to do is just being shaped around your status. So, like the first thing you would think about as a refugee kid living in a camp, so why you don't go out, like, and live in the city? Like, no, it's difficult because you are a Palestinian refugee. This is what I was hearing a lot. And then, okay, so why we don't go out to Lebanon if we can't go out of the camp? So, like, because we can't travel because you are a Palestinian refugee. I kept hearing the same sentences. After that, also, the least thing you can do is to plan for your future. So, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor, an engineer, I don't know, a business. I want to work in business, and I was also hearing the same sentence, you can't because you are a refugee, because Palestinian refugee in Lebanon are not allowed to work like about 26 professions. So it's like, even if you are studying, it's for nothing. So I kept hearing this no because you're a refugee, but you have no clue what it means. I grew up and all these questions are in my mind. And then I discovered that refugee is like a status. It's just a paper. So I discovered that like my whole life and my whole decisions was based on the paper that I have. It's just nothing. And at the first instance, I thought like if we change country, that would be the solution for my problem. We just change the country and everything would be fine. I got a chance, and I was from the luckiest Palestinian refugees who had the chance to leave Lebanon, and I arrived in Malta in 2014. That time I thought like everything should be fine now, so we changed Lebanon and that's okay. And I was shocked that I changed the country, but I didn't change the status. It's the same, it's a refugee. You're a refugee in Lebanon, refugee in Malta, you are a refugee, so it's the same problems, but it added up more troubles for me. So I am in Malta now, a refugee woman, a Muslim refugee woman wearing hijab. So like in Lebanon, at least I didn't have the troubles for being Muslim or wearing hijab, but in Malta, it just like added the troubles more. In Malta, I got engaged with a group of young refugees from all over the world in UNHCR Global Consultation, which was about they were trying to search what are the challenges that are facing young refugees worldwide. So I was a part of that group. During the consultation, we were sharing that what are the challenges. And for sure, it's basic challenges: access to education, access to healthcare, access to even food, to shelter. So I was thinking, okay, so we are all coming from totally different places across the globe, but we are sharing the same challenges just because we're sharing the same status. After the consultation, the group decided like we're gonna go more one step and form our own group to advocate for the right of refugee in Malta. And that's how it started. We started advocating for the right of young refugees. We had a training in leadership, in public speaking. After that, like after a year, we registered our group as the first refugee-led NGO in Europe, and it probably was the first one in the world. That's called Spark 15. So the Spark 15, which just started as a spark, as an idea, was our main focus was how to show the world that the refugee is just a status, it's just a paper. Like it doesn't have to shape your life or to decide who you are, because nowadays, if you have to tell like I'm a refugee, as if I don't know, but it's just it doesn't scale or measure your qualifications, your skills. It's just something that it's just ink on paper. This is the word that a lot of people who can't understand this point. So our main focus was to try and send a message that refugee is just a status. We still have our skills, we still have our qualification, and we deserve a chance. It's just each one deserve a chance. We tried to work in many different integration programs and activities to try and integrate the young refugees in Malta within the young community. And it works. And one of the most important challenges that we found is access to higher education. Like, there were a lot of young refugees in Malta, but at the University of Malta there were only 11 refugees out of the total 11,000 students. So we would try to see why it is like this. And we did a research about what are the challenges that kept the young refugees outside, because we believe that access to higher education can change a lot in refugees' life. And that's how we get to know to get in touch with the President of Malta, with the Minister of Education, and we put out a program for teaching refugees English language programs, so they can prepare them to get into the university and do the IELTS exam or the TOEFL exam before they get in. And now, we have a total number of 30 refugees who are going through the English program. So